Welcome back to another episode of Finding Freedom. Now, there are many episodes of Finding Freedom, but if you speak to a doctor, they might just say they're having an episode or a moment or a thought of reflection, right? So I normally journal some stuff down, kind of sketch it out, with some bullet points. And then I'd like to go off the top or the dome. You do this in a cipher when you freestyle. So they haven't done that in a while. Now, how to not get in Barney Rubble trouble. If you ever seen Ocean's 11, you get the phrase. It was from Basher. So, point number one. If something feels off, then say that, right? But if you feel good, then you good. See, 8 and great rhyme with poor K, right? But then, of course, good rhymes with hood, I think. Unless it rhymes with some other stuff. Anyways, point number 2. Have you ever seen the movie Demolition Man, which is about what exactly, right? They put certain people on ice and things like that, transport them to a different place and time, and then Sylvester Stallone is like doing stuff and he's like, how do I know how to crochet? And they're like, oh, part of your rehabilitation program was that we taught you how to crochet and things like that. So, these are the things that you have to learn how to do in order to, control oneself, because things are done differently here. However, the whole thing and premise within that movie was that the person that was the enemy had all these other abilities. And they were trying to balance out the scales and stuff like that, right? And so they let one out, and then the other one had to come out to catch the other one. And you guys know the ending of that movie. If you haven't, I suggest you go see it. It's with Sandra Bullock, and she is beautiful. Anyways, I think she's also Canadian. Moving forward, point number 3 here. In Alice in Wonderland, the Red Queen liked to say what? Casting judgment on what? Right? Off with their heads, blah, blah, blah. Right? And she'd get all bloodshot red in her face and everything, and her hair was red and all this other stuff. And, thou shalt not what? So don't say it, right? It's like going to pull apart, right? What do you do to a car that is no longer functioning? You pull apart whatever you need, then you go and use it for yourself. You don't automatically make it happen, if you know what I'm saying. Hence the reference or the round robin back to, Alice in Wonderland. So, how to not get in trouble is to not be dumb, right? Think about it, as they used to say, right? And why do I say it like that? Well, my favorite movie was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and, Raph, which is ironically Raphael, who were named after the Renaissance artists, had a short temper or fuse, like an M80 firecracker. And so he wore the red bandana, right? And now this is not a tale or a tall story, but you should pay attention to certain things, right? Now, why is that? Why is that? Why is that? Now, you had Leonardo. Ironically, I think Leo is the Pope's name. And he was blue, right? And he had the 2 swords, right? Because he understood the meaning and the purpose of using 2 swords, right? When you use 2 swords, the katanas, right? They do something differently than the sais would do that were given to Raphael, right? And then, of course, Michelangelo was given the nunchucks. And then, of course, Donatello had the staff, right? Because he was, although very knowledgeable, right? Very talented. He was a techie, right? I think he wore purple. Well, if that was the case, you have to understand that you can also do more with less. Just like you can use a staff to defend yourself or a stick. So can a stick beat a knife? Well, yeah, because it helps you maintain distance between you and your opponent, but you should never take your eye off your opponent, right? Some people would actually give an eye for wisdom and solitude and everything else. And if you study lore, that would be like Odin, right? He gave up his eye for something, for powers, wisdom, so on and so forth, right? But what is wise is normally sometimes dumb, right? What is free is also sometimes dom or dumb. Which one is it? Did you spell it correctly, right? This is why they should say you should listen to understand instead of respond with a short fuse. This is why also in court, if you do not have a lawyer or an attorney present to speak on your behalf, right? You may say something and the judge will say, okay, so that's not a very intelligent move to do. But if you want to represent yourself, go ahead, unless you actually can and read books. There was a movie called Good Will Hunting where, who was it? He was in Jason Bourne. Matt Damon, that was his name. And in that movie, he represented himself, right? And it was very interesting in that movie because he not only did it, but did it well. And the judge literally looked at the rap sheet that he had and he's like, this case presented to you, blah, 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 blah. I guess they were trying to paint him in a corner or something or set him up. And he just kept like defending himself because he couldn't afford an attorney, yet alone they wouldn't probably provide a public attorney, right? PA, right? So when he did so, he's like, you defended yourself. One. Defended yourself. One. He goes, what? What is somebody like you living like this for? Right? If you ever seen that movie, he was like, why is someone like you living like this? Why don't you do something else? Like, you seem highly intelligent. Why don't you put more stuff to it, right? And make use of it. Some people are allowed to and some people are not, right? See, I tried to explain the difference between liberty and freedom and why the Statue of Liberty does not reside on U.S. soil, right? But then they say, come here and you be free and freedom and all this other stuff. Yet if you act dumb, stay silent and let people do stuff and treat you, well, the way, one wants to be treated? People aren't always where they want to be. Sometimes they are where they are placed or where they feel the safest. Does that make sense? Because if you went out and actually saw the rest of the world and see how backwards things actually are, you may not even want to stay here. Think about it. So you can ask Google or whatever, read a dictionary, or you could draw it out like Pictionary, and, understand what's the difference, right? Now, for the last point, why should one ask questions, right? Before casting any judgment, like the redheaded queen that would always say, off with their head, blah, 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 do this, da, 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 da. Right? Because she would get very flustered, so on and so forth, etc. This is not to beguile or upset or misappropriate, anything that is being said, because it might be misinterpreted because there's a lack of understanding, not lack of information, especially in the day in which they live in. Do you understand what I'm saying? If not, ask a question, put it down in the comments. In the book, it says, forgive them for they know not what they do. And then something happened and somebody popped up like a kangaroo, right? But how did he get out of a rock and a hard place, right? With guards in front. Now I'm going to round robin back to Ocean's 11, Do you remember when they went to, who was it, Terry Benedict's, what's it called, casino, right? And they were robbing the casino, so on and so forth, etc. And they had a guy that was in there that were putting these explosives on the vault door, right, to blow the door, to steal the money, right? And his hand got stuck. So he got stuck with his hand in the cookie jar, if that makes sense, right? Well, what happened in that part? Because it was similar to the movie or the book, right? So how did the guards not know, or how, or maybe they were knocked out, and that's how they got someone out between a rock and a hard place, because that mattered more than the money. It was just to teach someone a lesson when they took it from them in Ocean's 11. Remember that. Anyways, I'll talk to you guys later. This has been another episode of Finding Freedom. Peace.